It's a mixed bag of results for the D-backs over the past 2 weeks, but who cares, because the Snakes' number one prospect, Jordan Lawlar, has been called up, and the last time we had a season debut for the Snakes on the road in San Fran, it was a little-known player called Paul Goldschmidt, and we all know how he turned out. We're talking all this and more, coming up right now.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send the ball all the way around. Corbin Carroll with it inside the park. Answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the T-Backs Podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. We're proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. It's been an interesting up and down week for the Snakes. Since we last talked about baseball, I've been on a bunch of podcasts. I've watched some of the UK's best baseball, and then, things started to go a little bit wild. I think Merrill Kelly would have probably got the win if he hadn't left due to cramps, dominating only at 60 pitches through 5 against the Phillies. The offense didn't capitalize early on chances versus Luzardo with a frustrating loss. Game 2 against the Phillies was a 10K day for Erod, but he continues to get screwed by relief pitchers allowing runners to score. Leaves at 7-2, 2 inherited runs score to make it 4 runs. His changeup was A+, but it was good work from Erod, but was still terrible. Game 3 against the Phillies, Geraldo Perdomo had himself a 4-hit day. Corbin Carroll with 3 RBIs. Gritchick had a clutch 2-out double in the top of the 9th. And it finished 3-3 in the road trip to the Mets and the Phillies. So my takeaway from that was we would survive. Ultimately, Game 1 versus the Mets, a loss that never should have happened. Alec Thomas called out on the second, and probably the worst call of the season so far. It was even reviewed in MLB HQ in, you guessed it, New York, and they confirmed that the glove didn't make contact until his hand was on the base, but they wouldn't overrule the call because there wasn't a big enough margin of error on the original on-field call, and thus the Mets won the game despite the D-backs bats getting a little warmer than they had been recently. Game 2 finally got the Snakes back on winning track, and Zach Gallen, despite a rare run walked in, got the win with a vintage Milkman performance. And he switched up that approach nicely, using that four-seam fastball as a lock-up strikeout pitch, the last thing most batters would be expecting, although his knuckleball does remain outstanding. Got up to 10 in a row, retired with 3 1-2-3 innings, and became the first D-back starter of the year to get through 7 innings, giving up 1 run on 2 hits. And at the start of last week's show, we talked about Shelby Miller getting the job done, and he did it again with a little help from some Pena power from Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who's clearly loving the new Purple City Connect uniforms if their Insta story is anything to go by. If you want a bit of a hot take on the show this week when it comes to the new City Connects, I'm not the biggest fan. As much as I like the purple coming back, I think the combination of the black with the neon blue instead of the original greeny purpley teal, I think that's a downgrade. And as much as I like the Serpientes concept, I feel they could have done more with it. It could have been bolder. It could have been more interesting. But hey, I'm not going to complain. We have a purple uniform back, and if you know anything about this show's graphics, you know I love the purple. Game 3 was Merrill Kelly's turn to take on Kodai Senga after Gallen and co got the better of the Mets' Japanese ace last week. Merrill revealed that fans have been sending him pickles and Red Bull in the mail to help with his cramping issues, and it seemed to be working, sending down 12 straight by the end of the 5th inning, although Juan Soto did grab the lead on the 3rd hit with a solo 470-foot homer to center field off the inside edge. It fell apart a little bit for Merrill in the 7th, though. He allowed another 2 after that homer and was replaced by Jalen Beeks. The Diamondbacks offense had executed terribly once they got men on base. Senga issued 5 walks, but a caught stealing in the 1st inning, a thrown out at home in the 2nd, and a failed sac bunt, followed by a 4-6-3 double play in the 3rd, shut down the offense. And there were no answerbacks in the 7th as Alec Thomas and Tim Tower got stranded. The rally was killed as Cattell grounded out weakly to 2nd as a pinch hitter. And then Juan Soto piled on a bit more hurt to start the 8th, making it 4-0 with 105 off the bat. Corbin answered back with a 427-foot moonshot to dead center to start the 8th, but Castillo got lit up out of the pen in the 9th to allow the lead to grow to 7. Both Gallen and Kelly's starts meant the bullpen wasn't overused going into the series against the Dodgers at Chase Field, but there was a discussion to be had about catcher. The D-backs were 10-4 with Herrera at catcher. So was Gabby's offensive slump offset enough by his elite defense behind the disc? Well, Gabby clearly saw some of those tweets that you guys had been sending him and belted a grand slam off of Yoshinobu Yamamoto to win Game 1 against the Dodgers. We didn't make the most off of Kodai Senga when he had an off day, and were punished for it. But Yamamoto and the Dodgers missed an easy ground out, then plunked Gino to load the bases, and Gabby delivered when we needed on a 3-for-4 night for the guy behind the dish. And that's the ruthlessness and efficiency that top teams need to get to the business end of the season. Ketel Marte got their first homer of the year for Yamamoto as well, and stretched the lead, and Kevin Ginkel got the save despite giving one up to Shohei Ohtani. And overall, it was a strong start that might have shut up a few of the Torey Lovullo doubters. It was only Game 1, but Brandon Pfaadt was dealing as usual with 6 wins, leading the National League, tossing 6 scoreless innings, and the Brandon Pfaadt Cy Young campaign continues. The Grand Slam train kept on rolling as well, with Lourdes Gurriel tacking on some in a blowout bash in Game 2. But the Diamondbacks would ultimately fall to a 14-11 loss thanks to Shohei Ohtani's 3-run blast in the 9th after the Shakes had come back from 8-3 to lead. The bullpen had managed fairly well for once, especially with a shout-out to Christian Maynor, who went 3.2 innings with 0 hits, 0 earned runs, and 5 Ks in just their second career appearance. But Kevin Ginkel was left a bit high and dry, asked to go long after his save in Game 1, and ultimately it was that bullpen mismanagement that cost us the second win of the series. But the answerbacks weren't going to surrender and throw the white flag in the series just yet. Corbin Burns threw 7 scoreless in Game 3 to get the better of the billion-dollar Dodgers, with a 10-pitch scoreless first inning, including a double play off of Mookie after Shohei singled the leadoff. And Burns kept rolling from there, facing off against Dustin May, making his return from injury after missing all of last year for the Dodgers. And maybe he wasn't quite 100% though, and despite a good battle with Burns, Gino Suarez took him 450 feet with a monster home shot in the 6th. There was a bit more good news as Justin Martinez threw a bullpen session ahead of the game, with Torey describing the ball as sizzling out of his hand, which is lovely news. And the good news kind of kept coming. If we're going to gloss over the big loss to split the series against the Dodgers last night, the breaking news is that Jordan Lawlar is finally getting called back up ahead of the series against probably our closest division competitor, which is the San Francisco Giants. There's rumors about Dre Jameson and Kendall Graveman as well, but Jordan Lawlar has been the subject of the Valley hype all winter and spring. He raked in Dominican Winter Ball, he looked super sharp in spring training, and currently in Reno, he's played 37 games in 152 at-bats, and as everyone was saying, it was crucial and critical to his development after missing so much of last year that he gets at-bat every day. He played all through the winter in the Dominican Republic in sort of pursuit of adding that goal. And it seems to be paying off. He's had plenty of value so far, slashing .336 with a .992 OPS of 51 hits, which included 6 homers and 13 stolen bases, and that's what I call a pretty complete package. And that's before you consider that Lawlar can play almost anywhere on the infield, as well as potentially in center as well. We briefly saw that before the season. He's already had a taste of postseason baseball against the Phillies in 2023, so personally I'm excited to see if he's the kind of spark the D-backs need to start climbing the division and bring a little bit of hunger to get back to the postseason, with the Snakes currently 3 games back from tomorrow's opponents, the Giants, in the last wildcard spot. Of course, Torey Lovullo loves versatile players, but the biggest factor working against Jordan Lawlar during spring was, there wasn't a spot for him to play for. But across 17 starts at second base, 10 at shortstop, and 8 at third in Reno, he flashed the leather regularly. And he's going to be a utility guy. Torey Lovullo has said that he wants impact players, and having offense, defense, base running, and versatility is all good. We've had plenty of those players competing for a spot. Like Ildemaro Vargas was in the conversation at the start of the season. That was sort of why Garrett Hampson was brought in. Tim Tower is the ultimate utility guy. Ultimately, this move, the corresponding roster move, will probably see Garrett Hampson either optioned or electing free agency to bring Jordan Lawlar up. If Kendall Graveman is available as well, that will probably see, I would expect Joe Manaply to be the corresponding move heading back down on that front. But since Tim Tower has proved that he can play in the outfield, he had a stint at left for a time in the most recent couple of series, I think that's probably going to spell the end of Garrett Hampson's Diamondbacks career, at least for now. People are getting very frustrated seeing his name on the team sheet, even when it was like a scheduled rest day for Ketel. Cattell's rest days and, the rest days of anybody else in the infield who thought, oh yeah, they might get a rest day, don't seem to end up happening. We always seem to desperately need them to come in as pinch hitters on those off days. The same happened with Geraldo Perdomo a few days ago. So that brings the next question. Is Jordan Lawlar's calling up just, a Band-Aid, a placebo for Diamondbacks fans to say, oh yeah, we're going to look at this instead of focusing on what some people are calling lineup mismanagement from Torey Lovullo? I'll give you a moment to process that question before I tell you that the answer is no, of course it isn't. Torey Lovullo and Mike Hazen aren't out here playing 3D chess trying to desperately come up with distractions for how they manage the team. 162 games of baseball a year is a lot of ball to play, and ultimately there's not a conspiracy to make the Diamondbacks worse than they could be. Torey Lovullo is still probably one of the best managers in baseball. I don't hear too many people who would have any other candidates. Like, in terms of the managerial market right now, the Pirates and the Rockies are showing you what a failing manager looks like and what should happen to a failing manager. They've fired their gaffers. Torey Lovullo is very much not in the same boat as the Pirates or the Rockies are by any stretch of the imagination. Anybody who thinks they are merely needs to look at the form record. I know, we're fourth in the division, but we're fourth in the division, 6 games back from an incredible LA Dodgers team, as much as I hate to say it, but we've still got a positive win record. We're at 5-12 at 21-20 right now. Pittsburgh, bottom of the NL Central, 14-27, and obviously the Rockies are 7-33. And the irony is that they sacked their manager after a win against the Padres last night. Those are teams that are saying, hey, yeah, maybe the manager should be taking a responsibility for that and should be having their job in jeopardy. Look at Baltimore, bottom of the AL East, 15-24. That's a team that has some good players on there, and they're not doing much. So before you come out here and you start with these, should we say, interesting takes, consider that, for example. Torey Lovullo, of course, is part of this organization that ultimately, it's an organization that did look attractive enough for somebody like Corbin Burns to say, yeah, I want to come and play my baseball there. It's an organization that Josh Naylor signed for in the offseason, and he's, very quickly becoming a guy a lot of fans like. He's a guy who ultimately was involved in the acquisition of some incredible players throughout the years. And yeah, I know we have the reputation of the Diamondbacks retirement home, but Torey Lovullo's job is not just to, go out and deliberately try and lose baseball games, as some of you guys over on the bad place are probably going to tell me. Torey Lovullo's job is to make sure that, one, these players do play good baseball, and I don't think anybody's doubting that these players play good baseball, but at the same time, Torey Lovullo's job is also to make sure that these guys don't, get injured, they're not brought up too early and struggle. What more do you want the guy to do? He's now calling up Jordan Lawlar, who in AAA leads the Pacific Coast League in hits and runs scored, top 5 in average, RBI, stolen bases, doubles, and slug percentage. He wouldn't have those numbers, and he wouldn't be developing as a player if Torey Lovullo said, yeah, just because Diamondbacks say so, we're going to call him up and we're not going to bother getting any backup options for the infield because we have Jordan Lawlar. And then what would have happened if Lawlar had come in and flopped and would have not been ready or hadn't quite fully recovered from those thumb injuries that was stopping them from really swinging the bat the way we know we can? If Torey Lovullo had bowed to the pressure on that sense, we may not be getting, the apparently game MLB ready player that we are now. Just because he made appearances in 2023 with 10 in the regular season and 3 in the postseason, most of which were as a pinch runner, I might add, doesn't mean he's ready, like almost 2 years later, to play the top level of baseball going into a series against a Giants team where, if you tuned into a Brit Does Baseball Does podcast on the most recent episode, I was guesting alongside Cal from the UK Giants fan group and pointing out just how good these Giants are doing, not just in terms of, the signature signings, like, obviously Willy Adames has come in and thought, yeah, well, he's going to do well. He had a great season with the Brewers last year. Of course he's going to do well. But somebody like Mike Yastrzemski, a bit of a veteran out there in right field for the Giants. I'd say kind of a league average player based on his reputation, based on what I know about him. And yet he's probably going to at least win a Gold Glove this year, if not get shouts for higher awards, given how much his defense has improved. I think it might end up being between him and Corbin Carroll for a Gold Glove given. But I think the individual improvements in defensive play in their positions, then they were both guys not necessarily known for their defense, and in Corbin's case it was certainly a weakness. Lots of people did try and run on Corbin's arm because they knew that he didn't quite have the cannon that some players do, but that's very much changed these days. But ultimately, if you're worried about what potentially could happen against the Giants today, don't be. Baseball is a long season. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to help even out the form charts a little bit. But ultimately, I think today could be a good day to get excited, not just because it's a fairly reasonable time of day for baseball to be happening. If you're, watching in Arizona, you probably aren't going to struggle with a local blackout, as opposed to me, where most of my games are going to start at 2 a.m. this week. But also because Pavin Smith, our DH/first baseman, is going to be facing his favorite pitcher on the mound. If you remember Pavin's massive multi-homer game against the Astros last year, that came against Justin Verlander, and look who's scheduled to pitch for the Astros today. It's Justin Verlander. So I'm not going to give you betting advice on this show, but if you want to go and stick a cheeky $10 on that, I feel like that's probably the way to go on that one. And you got to think about it. Looking at things in the form chart, people were complaining that Torey Lovullo gave Lourdes Gurriel an off day and said, Torey shouldn't be resting him because he was supposedly heating up. But then yesterday he went 0-4, which makes him 2 for 17 in his last 4 games. I don't think that some of these people, these armchair managers, know as much about ball as they think they do, for want of a better term. But Torey Lovullo was a key part in the discussions with Corbin Burns. It was him, Ken Kendrick, and Mike Hazen sort of all getting in a room and getting on a call with Corbin Burns and saying, hey, come play in Arizona and here's what we can offer for you. But let's not think about, Corbin Burns has been terrible, yada, yada, yada. We have not seen the best of Corbin Burns. He is clearly taking time to get settled, and that win against the Dodgers where he threw 7 scoreless innings, that's the Corbin Burns that we paid the money for. And ultimately, if/when Zach Gallen walks in free agency at the end of this year, that's the Corbin Burns that's going to be the ace of the staff. If you compare his first 4 starts versus his last 3 starts, with thanks to Arizona Diamondbacks stats and info online, first 4 starts with a 4.64 ERA and 21 innings pitched, 21 hits, 11 earned runs, 4 homers, and 17 strikeouts. In his last 3 starts, he's got a 0.98 ERA over 18 innings, giving up 12 hits, 2 earned, 1 homer, and 16 K. So, Corbin Burns is clearly a good pitcher, and just because he was a signing that happened while Torey Lovullo was manager of the Diamondbacks and then suddenly takes some time to get up to speed in a new team in a very different pitching environment, that like Milwaukee versus Arizona, atmospherics very different, like fan base pretty different. Why would he all of a sudden just find that exactly the same as before and continue to throw the same way? He's changed how he pitches. He's changed the way he throws some of his pitches to adapt to that. And now I think he's got a feel for that. I think you're going to start to see a lot more of those absolutely quality starts from Corbin Burns. I think the fact that we saw his best start of the season immediately after he'd missed his last scheduled start with shoulder inflammation, and they gave him a week off to rest up on that, and then he came back and immediately was absolutely quality. I don't think that's a coincidence either. That shows that actually, the team is being managed well. They identified an issue before it became a problem, and then they dealt with it. Justin Martinez, you could see something wasn't quite wrong with his shoulder inflammation. They identified the issue. They left it. He's throwing bullpens now, and apparently the velocity is just back and as good as it was before. If Torres' job isn't just to win baseball games, but at the same time to look after the biggest assets on this team to make sure that they can remain an asset on this team as their best possible self, playing their best possible baseball, then yeah, he's doing a good job. And I don't think anyone is seriously suggesting on very many professional fronts, as opposed to just the echo chamber that social media can be sometimes, that Torey Lovello is not the right man for the job. Like in this case, he's blooded Christian Maynor now as well. He's probably not going to see too many other relief appearances in the next few weeks, just because he doesn't seem quite ready yet, but has huge potential for a few years from now. He's got decent stuff, obviously, on Fangraphs, and we know the statistics there. But one good outing is too early to say, and we don't know what the pitching or coaching staff sees. But you think about his age and how hitter-friendly the Pacific Coast League is, it's got to be really encouraging for Diamondbacks fans how he's strung a few quality starts together in AAA this year. We're continually saying online that Diamondbacks off days are scheduled off days advised by the medical team. That's Torey's decision. No, they're not. If we had another manager, the schedule would remain the same. These players would still rest when they're supposed to be doing that, because the medical teams say that is what's best for them. And a manager that listens to that rather than forcing their opinion, there you go. In this case, Torey Lovello is the guy who's making these moves and saying, okay, is listening to his staff, and then he's going to go and make a decision. I don't think we want to be one of those franchises that mismanages their players. We don't want to be a franchise that is known for asking too much of people who clearly aren't ready. Cough, LA Dodgers, cough. Can you imagine if, somebody like Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, any of the great players of the current or previous last 10 years were just told, yeah, you play every day regardless of whether or not you have an injury? You would not have some of the big moments in baseball that you have today. And yeah, I know Shohei Ohtani is kind of a bad example because he's not pitching at all anymore, and some people think he probably won't ever pitch again. But he's still somebody who brings in a hell of a lot of revenue to the sport, and regardless of whether or not that revenue goes to a lot of other places instead of being equally distributed amongst the team with a cough salary cap, cough stop deferred payments, cough cough, these things are important to remember, and I think we forget that a lot in the online social media space. But hey, the good vibes are still good. Diamondbacks still have some great in the clubhouse dudes. We still love Geraldo Perdomo. We've got Ketel Marte back. There's gonna be a much stronger looking bullpen in the next few weeks. If you're dropping Joe Manaply, you're bringing in Kendall Graveman, you're dropping Christian Maynor and Jose Castillo to bring up someone like AJ Puck back from the 60-day IL, or Justin Martinez from the 15-day, and you're thinking about what's going to happen with Dre Jameson, who everyone is always going to be excited about if he can get his location and his control sorted, because he's got 5 pitches and they all have solid velocity and changing speeds. If we can work on the control of that breaking stuff, all of a sudden that could be an insane 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning, 9th inning punch combination. And as people have pointed out a couple of times in the last few weeks, when the Diamondbacks have at least a set 7, 8, 9, that's, maybe even a 6, 7, 8, 9, like we had in 2023 in that run to the postseason with Thompson, Ginkel, Sewald to finish teams off, and Justin Martinez was just basically on the periphery there. Like we weren't even sure what Justin Martinez was going to be just yet in that bullpen. We do well when we have that set. The same thing happened in 2016. Like the likes of Andrew Chafin, Archie Bradley, you get that lockdown, and you have the confidence in the guys who are going to do that, and you manage it effectively. Sky's the absolute limit for this Diamondbacks team, and I know I say that a lot, and I know I'm the false positivity guy. But hey, I'll even it up. There is a post that I've put out on X, formerly Twitter, on my account @GBDiamondback. If you disagree with some of the things I say on this podcast, and you're saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't know ball. I'm an American. He's a Brit. What does he know?" I challenge you to prove it. I have said that if my post gets to 1,000 likes, I will chug milk non-stop live on the podcast during Zach Gallen's next start. Since people have said, "Oh, yeah, that thing where somebody crochets a sweater during crochet starts," people said, "Oh yeah, burn down a house during Corbin Burns' starts." I'm adding to that. So if you think I don't know ball and you want to see myself humiliate myself live on the internet, then by all means go like that tweet, repost it. That's your chance to get one back on me of this stupid Brit who clearly doesn't know baseball. We're gonna wrap the podcast episode up there. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Please make sure you go support our friends of the podcast over at the Home Run Travel Company, who run Britain's best and, as far as I'm aware, only trips around the United States to go and watch baseball in some of the best places to go and watch baseball. We talked about this on a Brit Does Baseball Does podcast. We did start bench cut for some of the stadiums of the NL West, and it was, sorry Diamondbacks fans, it was San Diego's Petco Park that came out on top in that one, unfortunately. If you fancy going to any of those ballparks with a group of people who love ball just as much as you do, those Home Run Travel are the people to reach out to. Thank you very much for listening. Please make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're watching/listening.